Supernatural Season 9, Episode 19, Alex, Annie, Alexis, Anne. This episode brings back our favorite invincible sheriff, Sheriff Mills, and I was glad to see her come back and actually survive again in this episode because I feel like she's the only character that we've had who is actually a recurring character who's actually a hero who hasn't been killed off in any of the episodes that she's been in. And it's really good to see that every episode she's in, whether it is sort of a one off type episode like this, or a more important episode like the last time she was in, or maybe it was the time before last, but when she was hexed by Crowley, an episode like that, no matter what, she always pulls through, whether it's because of the brothers or if it's because of herself just being an amazing sheriff slash hunter now. But it was good to get her back, and in this episode, they actually focus a lot on her character and giving her character some emotional development because in I don't even know which season, I always forget that she even had a family, but her introduction to the show was basically Bobby saving her life and killing off her family, like he had to kill his wife, and whether it was Bobby or Sam or Dean, she had to deal with that, and ever since that episode, she went through knowing exactly what was going on. Bobby kind of taught her the ropes, and Sam and Dean taught her some lessons here and there through some of the adventures they've had with her. And she's come out on top every time, and she does the same thing in this episode, but she deals with it in a much different way because it's not just I have to survive or I have to kill this thing or kill that thing or whatever. It's her dealing emotionally with this girl who was taken from her family by a family of vampires and was raised by them for years and years, and then she finally tries to leave, and then Sheriff Mills ends up interacting with her in her cabin, and it was a really good part of the episode where even though the girl was kind of rude about the fact that Sheriff Mills' family was dead, they did have a connection, and she knew that there was more to just her liking the vampires than you were with them for a long time. You know, they're obviously family, but at the same time, they're not your real family. And even at the end of the episode, the mama vampire knew what Sheriff Mills felt, and she understood the loss of a child because her daughter died, and that's why she changed the girl's name from Alexis to Alex, or from Annie to Alex. And it was just a really good episode, and I love that emotional development for Sheriff Mills' character, and it was just an emotionally powerful episode that was blended in with some of the more supernatural things that we typically get, like Sam and Dean killing vampires and a couple of decapitations because they're vampires. But it was a great episode, and I did love the development. Of course, Sheriff Mills is going to come back at some point in this series. It'll probably be sometime next season, but she's going to come back again because she's just going to come back as a character that makes it through. And she might have sort of an adopted daughter the next time we see her if she decides to keep this girl in her life. And I think that would actually be really cool just to have this character, a new recurring character, come into this show, and it might make for some pretty interesting episodes, especially the ones that are more driven towards the main storyline of each season, and they'll both be able to actually contribute because this girl knows about hunters and vampires because she was raised by vampires, so she's not oblivious to the world. She's oblivious to certain things as far as other monsters and how to kill them, but she could easily learn, and she knows the weaknesses of vampires and how they act when they're together. And they're typically, when they're shown in the show, vampires are in a pack. There've really only been a couple of episodes where the vampires were, it was like this one vampire just killing a bunch of people. It's typically vampires in nests, so she knows how the nests work and how the vampires interact with each other and who's in charge and how they might interact with their kids, so to speak. So hopefully she does come back as a recurring character as the newly adopted daughter of Sheriff Mills, even though she's probably like in her 20s by now. But she'd sort of be like her stepdaughter, and it could just change the series and also Sheriff Mills as a character. But it was a great episode, and of course, like most of their one-off episodes, they do find some little moment to tie into the main storyline. And this was without a doubt one of the best ways to tie into the main storyline, and that was Dean when he fought against the vampire. And he was pushed up against the wall, and you could tell, I mean, obviously vampires have super strength in the show, or in any show ever, because that's sort of their thing. That's one of them. They have super strength. And in this show, the vampires are always the same. You know, you have to decapitate them. They bite you, they'll rip you up. super strong, not affected by sunlight or pretty much any of the typical stuff. And Dean went up against this vampire, and he was pinned against the wall, and I wasn't sure if he was gonna, deflect him and sort of knock him down and then get him or whatever. But he was just up against the wall, and he just pushed this vampire back, flipped him around, and pushed him against the wall, and then he just flipped the blade and just chopped his head off. And that was an amazing scene to me. And it was funny when he was like, "Look at me, bitch." That was really funny to me. But that was a crazy scene, just showing how the mark of Cain is infused in him. It's not just, oh, here and there he might be stronger, might this, might that. If he's in danger, or if he needs to kill something, he is gonna get an insane boost like adrenaline or something. And he can even go hand to hand with a vampire and just chop its head off. And that was a crazy scene in that episode. And it was, like I said, it was the one hint that was really focused on the main storyline. But it's just yet another piece that shows how dangerous Dean can be with this mark of Cain, and how dangerous and unstable he might end up being. Every time they show something, all I keep thinking is, there's no way he's not going to lose control by the season finale, where he does eventually kill Abaddon or does whatever. And every time they mention it, I always talk about it in my reviews, something crazy is going to happen with him where he will lose control, and he'll either just start killing a bunch of demons that he doesn't need to, which no big deal there, but he might go up against Sam and might try to kill him, or might try to kill whoever else is in that final scene that's one of the good guys. And it could result in a really crazy season finale that sparks an entire season where, honestly, they can make it where they're just trying to get Dean under control, and he's just like killing everything because he's almost unstoppable thanks to the mark, and it makes him so powerful he can just wipe out like almost any demon. But every time they show it, it just makes me feel like that's what's going to happen more and more, that he's going to kill one little thing here and there. It'll be one vampire or one anything, and eventually he's going to get to Abaddon, and he'll take her out, and it'll be such a huge rush because he'll have to fight against someone who's incredibly powerful, but he'll be able to take her down. And then he'll be so amped up off the fact that he beat this like almost almighty demon, and then he's just gonna go on some sort of insane rampage. But it was a great little moment, and it showed just how powerful the mark of Cain makes him, and it shows that that strength is real. It's not just he sort of gets infused with strength when he swings the blade or anything. He's just strong with anything if he needs to be. And like I said, it's almost just a rush of adrenaline into his body, and he's able to go hand to hand with a vampire, which is unseen in this show. I mean, they always, of course, win even when it's hand to hand, but I believe this was the first time it was actually he was pinned, or one of the characters was pinned to the wall, and they just pushed back, and that's all there was. And then he pushed the blade onto the vampire, which shows how incredibly powerful he is compared to even a vampire who has been a vampire for a decade or so, and the vampire wasn't strong enough to just fight back against Dean. It shows how incredibly powerful Dean is becoming as a character physically, and with Dean being the character he is, he's already got that little bit of emotional anger inside of him from all sorts of aspects from his life, and that could just be channeled into the blade and into the mark itself and just make him insane. And just, it would be something to see, and I hope that's how they play it, that he does kind of lose control, even if it's only for the season finale. I'd love to see how that affects the rest of the series, and hopefully they do keep the mark of Cain in the show, at least in the next season, and then it sort of affects him so much that they do have to get rid of it. But it was a great tie-in to the main storyline, and I definitely can't wait to see how things play out with this mark, and just what happens to Dean from here on out and through future seasons of the show. But it was a great episode. Great to see Sheriff Mills come back. Great to see her survive, because I was worried that with this being, I want to say it's probably like her 8th time coming into the show, where it wasn't a part of the main thing. It was just like, hey, here's a one-off episode and they need help with Sheriff Mills, or they need to help her, or she helps them, or whatever. I was worried that this could be her final episode, but as always, she came through and we got some great emotional development. And I even love the ending where she's talking to the girl about how she basically just lost her entire family, and she's like, no one could possibly understand the tragedy you're going through after losing your whole family, like almost in front of your eyes. And the girl just looks at her and she's like, "You can." And then it just ends. I thought that was an amazing ending to this episode too, and it just kept this sort of sad theme going with Sheriff Mills and us getting some more emotional development out of her character and her using this girl to fill the hole that was lost when her husband and son died. But it was a great emotional episode, and it was a great. They dropped a great little hint in there with Dean killing the one vampire and him going a little bit further off the deep end with the Mark of Cain. But overall, I loved the episode. I thought it was great. Glad she made it for the millionth time. Just can't stress that enough. I'm just glad she survived because I hate when they kill off. Even if she isn't one of like the coolest characters or she isn't like a hunter or anything like that, she's a good character. She's one of the most plain characters in the show, and I don't mean that in a bad way because she's a normal person. She's stayed the sheriff through all these seasons, and she just makes it work. She knows the rules, you know, she knows how to hunt, she knows the different things, and she just remains a sheriff. She's able to stick to that, stick to a normal life, but when push comes to shove, she will decapitate a vampire, no questions asked. So it just makes her a really unique character in this series to me, and I'm once again glad she survived. But comment below, let me know what you guys thought of this episode, favorite parts, least favorite parts. And with Dean having shown this amazing amount of strength, where do you guys think things are going to go for Dean as far as strength and mental stability throughout the rest of this season and possibly future seasons if he does keep the Mark of Cain even after the season finale? Comment below, let me know, and thanks for watching.